This is Moza's latest flagship, the R25 Ultra. It's a powerhouse capable of delivering sustained 25Nm of torque. And this is my daily driver, the industry legend Simucube 2 Pro, which also delivers 25Nm of torque. So now with the price gap getting closer, R25 Ultra selling at $899 USD and the Simucube 2 Pro dropped to around $1,300 USD after the introduction of Simucube 3. That's why a lot of people are actually cross-shopping these two. So in this video, I will compare everything: pricing, hardware, software, ecosystems, and on-track performance. And then I will share my overall verdict. Just a quick disclaimer, Moza sent me this unit for review, but like all the other videos on this channel, this is a completely independent review. That said, whether I'm biased or not, I will leave that up to you to decide. Let's dive in. At first glance, the Moza R25 Ultra and the Simucube 2 Pro are both impressively compact, though the Simucube is a bit longer and narrower while the R25 is shorter and wider, making it easier to move monitor closer to you. When you rotate the shaft manually, both feel perfectly smooth, no notchiness or cogging whatsoever. However, under the hood, they achieve this result through two completely different engineering philosophies. In short, Simucube relies on high-quality, low-cogging industrial servo motors, while Moza utilizes a newly designed flat wire motor. A flat wire motor is an electric motor whose windings are made from rectangular or flat copper wire instead of traditional round wire. This technology is already a staple in high-end EV motors, and Moza is among the first to bring it into sim racing. The first advantage is torque density. Flat wire motors can deliver more torque for a given size because more copper can be packed into the stator slots, leaving less empty space. This is likely why Moza claims a 26% higher torque density than its rivals, while keeping the size compact, making it easier to hide the base in the same setup. Another major benefit is cooling. Because flat wire has more contact area with the adjacent turns, heat can transfer more efficiently. This is why Moza markets the base as delivering 25Nm of sustained torque, as the improved thermal efficiency helps reduce the thermal fade. Also, the new flat wire motor helps reduce cogging or torque ripple by using smaller stator slots. Zero cogging matters because that notchy feeling when you rotate the shaft can mask fine details, like subtle changes in road surface or the moment the tires start to lose grip. Both Moza and the Simucube have done this pretty well. They feel perfectly smooth even when I rotate them extremely slowly. Another key innovation in the R25 Ultra is the true torque sensor. Most wheelbases, including the Simucube 2, don't measure torque output directly. Instead, they estimate from how much electric current has flown through while the motor is running, and that can drift as the motor heats up or approaches magnetic saturation. So for example, what should be a 15 Nm output might actually be closer to 13 to 14 Nm after a long stint. Rather than estimating, the R25 Ultra measures the actual output using physical sensors or true torque sensor, and they're able to read 2000 times per second with a claimed sampling accuracy of 0.1%. The result is a more consistent, linear force feedback, no matter how long you run the wheelbase. Just note that this true torque sensor is only available for R25 Ultra, not on the R21, which likely explains the price gap. Overall, I don't notice any significant gap on track between the R25 and the Simucube. Both wheelbases feel responsive, accurate, and powerful. I will dive deeper into on-track performance later. Another hardware feature Moza markets is the 21-bit encoder, which divides a single 360-degree rotation into 2 million discrete positions, so it can track the wheel position extremely accurately. It sounds pretty cool, but this is actually now a standard feature on high-end gear. Simucube 2 Pro uses a 22-bit encoder, over 4 million positions tracking. In practice, most people agree that once you are beyond roughly 16-bit resolution, the human hand can barely perceive further improvements. So while it's a great number on the spec sheet, both bases are effectively perfect in this category. The quick release system is where I think Moza's design really shines. Moza's quick release is based on NRG system, which is used on real cars. It is incredibly intuitive, just pull the collar and the wheels pop off, making wheel swapping effortless, and at the same time it remains remarkably solid with virtually no flags. The system is so standardized that you can easily even bolt a real car steering wheel directly to the base, though of course you won't have any button box. On the other hand, the Simucube 2 Pro prioritizes absolute strength over speed. It uses a machined dovetail slide with a heavy-duty locking pin. While it is widely considered the most rigid quick release in the industry, it isn't that quick, to be honest. Swapping wheels requires pulling a physical pin and sliding the wheel off the rail, which is significantly more cumbersome than Moza's system. It is worth noting that unlike brands like Simagic or Acertec, neither Moza nor Simucube features a USB pass-through in the quick release. So if you want to use a third-party wheel, you have to run a coiled USB cable from the wheel directly to your PC. This adds some cable clout and prevents you from rotating the wheel infinitely. But for most racing disciplines, it's rarely a practical issue. On the aesthetic side, the R25 Ultra features dual RGB light strips. These are fully customizable through the software and can even be synced with the game telemetry to reflect the car movements or flags. While some drivers love the added flair and immersion, I personally see this as a nice-to-have feature rather than a deal breaker. It adds a bit of a modern touch to the rig, but it won't necessarily make you faster on track. Or will it? Now let's move on to the software side. Beyond the motor tech, Moza offers some massive quality of life features that I find really convenient. One of my favorite features is the ability to tweak settings on the fly using the Moza mobile app. You don't have to pause the sim, grab your keyboard or alt tab out of your race. You can easily adjust your force feedback gain, damping filters directly from your phone while sitting in the cockpit. While Fanatec or other brands may have a similar feature, it often relies on Wi-Fi bridging through a PC. Moza's app connects directly to the wheelbase through Bluetooth. It's fast, stable, and honestly a feature I wish every manufacturer, especially Simucube, would adopt. It's just so much more convenient. Moza also brings something called Force Feedback Effect Equalizer in their Moza Pithouse 2.0 update. Think of this like an audio equalizer for your steering wheel. Much like boosting the bass or treble in your car stereo, this allows you to boost or cut specific vibration frequencies. For example, if you want to feel more road texture or curbs, you can boost the 15 Hz range to strengthen the curb feeling at a lower car speed, or 40 to 60 Hz at a higher car speed. If the wheel feels too grainy or has a high frequency vibration noise, you can simply cut a 100 Hz plus range. This visual intuitive approach to tuning is a massive advantage to traditional sliders. Also, the R25 supports low frequency effect or LFE in iRacing. It's basically like having a butt kicker on your wheelbase. You can feel haptics like engine vibration, gear change jots, tire sleep, and more. This is supported natively for Moza R25, whereas the Simucube 2 requires some third-party app like Marvin's awesome iRacing app. But personally, I find the LFE effect a bit noisy. Take a listen. While it can add some immersion, I usually turn it off. The haptics I get through my motion system are already enough for me. But if you don't have butt kickers or motion, LFE can definitely add a nice layer of immersion. Just to keep in mind, at the time of filming, this feature is only supported in iRacing. I'm not sure if Moza will add support for other same titles in the future. Simucube still holds one major advantage: the paddock system, where users can share their settings. Because Simucube has been the industry standard for so long, they have a massive established user base. For example, you can simply search for iRacing Ferrari 296 GT3 and instantly download a profile created by other users, or sometimes even a professional esport driver. While Moza also has a preset repository and is growing fast, It's still relatively small compared to Simucube, but given how many people are jumping to the Moza ecosystem, I expect that gap to close very quickly. Now let's talk about the most important thing. How do they perform on track? First off, let's be clear. Both bases are incredibly smooth. There is a zero cogging or magnetic resistance in either unit, but once you are on track, the personalities start to emerge. Imagine you're taking a high-speed corner like on whatever, you know what I mean. The famous corner on Spa. The suspension is fully compressed and you're holding a massive sustained load, maybe 15 to 20 Nm. The Simucube 2 Pro is legendary here. It maintains the heavy load with a zero deflection. But the real magic is that while the wheel is heavy, the tiny details like a small bump mid-corner or texture on the asphalt still come through perfectly. The heavy resistance never masks the fine texture. The R25 has the muscle to match, and that flat wire motor refuses to fade. However, in these high-low corners, the fine details can feel a bit more muffled. To be fair, the difference is tiny. I have to drive the same corner repeatedly with the filters turned on and off to confirm it. The muffling feels like a software tuning choice rather than a hardware limit, so we may see Moza sharpen this up in the future firmware. For now, the Simucube just feels slightly more transparent. Then let's see how they feel over curb strike, which tests how the motor handles sudden spikes in force. The Moza R25 Ultra is remarkably crisp here. Thanks to the high slew rate, it delivers a heavy, satisfying thud. At the same time, you can feel all tiny ripples in the textured curb, giving you a real sense of the car's weight as it's bouncing over the paint. On the other hand, the Simucube delivers this heat with a frightening speed and zero overshoot. When the physics engine says stop, the motor stops, period. There's no residual ringing or extra vibration. You know exactly where the limit of that curb is because there's a zero false haptic noise. Honestly, I don't think there's a clear winner here. Both are elite at translating curb texture. Finally, I have tested the center field. Early reviews mentioned R25 felt vague or floaty at 0 degrees. After some back-to-back testings, I found that differences isn't nearly as big as people say. It's likely that Moza's latest firmware has ironed this out. I did notice that if you turn on the hands-off detection safety feature, it does introduce some floatiness around the center. But once I turned that off, the R25 felt right on par with the Simucube. Solid, weighted, and direct at the center. Alright, it's time to address the absolute elephant in the room: pricing. Up until now, looking at the driving experience, the build quality, and the software, there isn't a clear winner yet. But that all changes the second you look at the invoice. Let's start with the bases alone. The R25 lands at roughly $899 USD. And if you live in Australia, all these retailers selling Moza product, make sure you check before you buy. Meanwhile, the Simucube 2 Pro, even after being discounted following the launch of the Simucube 3, is still costing around $1,300 USD. Right out of the gate, Simucube is asking for a massive premium. But here's the thing, you can't steer with just the wheelbase. And once you factor in the wheels, Moza starts to run away with it. You've got everything from the entry-level ESX wheel at just $129 USD, though I don't think many people will pair that with a 25 Nm base, to the high-end, spaceship-like Porsche Mission R wheel, which costs $1,300. They even have a dedicated truck wheel if you want to try something completely different. Currently, I'm using the GS V2P GT wheel, which cost around $370 USD. It's been fantastic, great value for money, and I will have a full review on that shortly. Now let's look at the Simucube side. If you want that native wireless experience, you are going to pay for it. Even an entry-level Simucube Savo Sports is over 900 USD, and the Asia Racing F28 sits at $850, which is also an entry-level wheel. Sure, you can go third party with a wired USB wheel, but for a lot of people that cable is a compromise they just don't want to make. My personal setup right now is the Ultra V2 wireless button box from Sim Racing Bay, paired with a Turn R305 rim. It feels great, but it's a basic setup that doesn't have the dual clutch pedals, which are useful for standing starts, and it still costs over $500. So let's do the math on the full setup in the real world. Let's start with the Moza ecosystem. For the R25 Ultra base and a decent wheel like my GS wheel, you're looking at roughly 1,300 USD. It's a high quality, plug and play, and relatively affordable for this tier of power. Now moving on to the Simucube ecosystem. For the Simucube 2 Pro base and entry-level Asia F28 SC V2, it will cost you over 2,100 USD. And remember, that is just for an entry-level wheel. That means with the money you save by going with the Moza, you could buy Moza's M Booster active pedals that cost 999 USD, like the ones I'm using here. They are incredible pedals, and I will be doing a separate review on them later. So the question isn't just which base is better. Is the Simucube experience worth $1,000 more than what Moza is offering? For most of us, that's a very hard yes to justify. So where does that leave us? Has the Simucube finally been dethroned? In terms of pure raw engineering, the Simucube 2 Pro is still the benchmark. It remains the most transparent wheelbase on the market. If you are a sport professional or a purist who demands that clinical, unvarnished mechanical link to the car, and the price is absolutely no object, the Simucube is still the king. But for everyone else, the Moza R25 Ultra isn't just a competitor, it's a wake-up call to the entire industry. Moza has brought genuine innovation to the table with the flat wire motor and the True Torque sensor, delivering a driver experience that is, I would say 95–98% as good as a Simucube for just the 60% of the cost. And when you factor in the modern conveniences, the mobile app, the force feedback equalizers, and the sheer value of their wheel ecosystem, the argument for spending the extra $1,000 on Simucube becomes very thin. It was once unimaginable to own a high-fidelity 25Nm wheelbase for under 900 USD. Seeing this level of competition finally hit up is a massive win for the community. Moza didn't just release a new product, they forced the high-end market to evolve. Well done, Moza.